Let's talk about the writing process and how we go about creating a good piece of writing. So, I actually just took a class on the writing process Monday before school started. And the teacher of this class asked all of the other teachers, how many times have you shown your students an example of writing or a mentor text? And of course, all of us said yes. And then he asked, how many times have your students seen the process that went into writing that? And I know that I have not shown that to my students before. And so sometimes when we look at a piece of writing, especially by a published author, we might think, I'll never be able to do that. They just are really good at it. It just comes easy to them. But we know that that's not true, that those writers spent a lot of time revising and making changes until they finally got their finished product. So we're going to talk about the writing process that we are going to go through to make sure that we have really good writing pieces too. So there are several steps to finishing a piece of writing. It doesn't just happen in one sitting. It's not sit down, write, and be done. It's also not a step-by-step process. You're going to go back and forth between writing and revising and maybe editing and planning several times before you finally get to the finished product. But we always start with pre-writing. Pre-writing involves brainstorming ideas, planning what you're going to write, even though it might change later, organizing your writing, so using something like a graphic organizer to structure your thoughts, and selecting ideas and narrowing it down. And maybe that's choosing which pieces of evidence you want to include, or which topics you want to include, or which moments you want to include. Then we go to writing. The first time you write is usually called your first draft, or sometimes the rough draft. This is all about just putting all your ideas down on paper so you have something to work with. Kind of like a sculptor just putting out a big pile of clay and just starting to get the basic shape that they want. Then you're going to revise, and then you're going to write again. And good writers will have several drafts before they finish, so it's not just a one and done type of thing. When we go into revising is all about the arms. So these are some strategies that we can use in revising to make our writing better. We might add sentences or words. We might remove words or sentences. We might move them around to put them in a different place. Or we might substitute or change words or sentences that make things more clear. When we're editing, this is all about the cups. These are all those little details. So revising is like the big, strong, it has the biggest impact. A cup is a small thing that makes a big difference. So we look at our capitalization, our usage, like our nouns and verbs, and making sure that they match, our punctuation, our spelling, our citations, and making sure those are correct. So those are all part of editing. And you're going to go back and forth with writing, revising, and editing several times before you get to publishing. So after you've worked on your writing and you finally feel like it's finished, it's time to publish it. This means formatting it in the correct style, adding a title, and sharing it with others. And this is always the most exciting part. So why is the writing process important? Going through the entire process is important because it allows us to make sure we have the best possible piece. Writing is incredibly powerful, and our words can make an impact. That is why we want to make sure our writing is exactly the way we want to share it with the world. Think about this. Have you ever sent a text to someone that didn't sound like what you meant and it caused problems? Imagine that on a larger scale. Imagine if somebody running for president didn't proofread their speech and they said something really embarrassing or said something that they didn't mean, and now people don't want to vote for that person. We have to be really careful with our writing and making sure that we really believe in it before we share it with the world. So, which part of the writing process is hardest for you? Respond to this question on Google Classroom. Which step always seems the most challenging? Or maybe you feel like you've never really gone through the whole writing process in school before. So which one do you think seems like it would be the hardest? Explain why. And after you submit your answer, you'll be able to see your classmates' answers. so we can kind of see which ones we all struggle with if there's a pattern.